Welcome to the Uncanny Lens, where we are exploring self-concept reflections in pop culture and media. I'm your co-host, Jinx.
And I'm Minx.
And today we will be talking about the 1988 movie Big Business, starring Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin, and it is currently streaming on Disney+. So if you haven't seen this movie or it's been a while since you've seen it, that's where you can catch it right now. So let's dig into what's new in our media mindset this week, and then let's get into this movie because it's a really fun one for me, and we haven't really done a throwback. I know we did The Little Mermaid, but that's animated, and it doesn't include the fashion and music and things of what was going on in the late 80s, and so I'm really excited to kind of do this throwback today. So what is new in your media mindset right now, Minx?
Well, I've been reading both of Jonathan Van Ness's memoirs, Over the Top, which is, I think, his first memoir that he did in 2019. And one of the topics that comes up in that story is that shame is being something that can control us. So shame is just reinforcing the inner voice of patriarchy, which continues to feed it. And how letting go of our shame can help us start to break free of the patriarchy. And yeah, that's something that I'm kind of exploring and looking at and owning shame as opposed to hiding it. So instead of secrets, just kind of owning it, I mean, JVN, as he is fondly known by the people who love and adore him, comes out in this memoir talking about how he contracted HIV and was a meth addict and all these things that kind of held him back for so long as just being this space of shame. And now writing this story that is giving him his power back. And that's just really inspiring. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So Jinx, what's new in your media mindset this week?
Well, thank you so much for asking. I have been working on a project with my Reconnect Dance group and Art as Action called I Am Here. And we have been working on choreography for a virtual performance that we were doing. And it really has been beautiful for me to be a part of this group because it is such a community-centered group, and it is about moving our bodies and doing what we can despite the limitations that we may have on our body, and learning how to not let those limitations hold us back from enjoying our bodies, right? Or not letting the pain hold us back from enjoying our bodies. And connecting and being in community and doing things we really love. We recorded our virtual performance. I was having some technical issues and I was so frustrated, and you could see it on my face. I am not someone who can hide my emotions on my face despite what I think I may be doing. And so as we started moving and dancing, it felt really great because I felt the shift from being in my head to going into my body.
Yeah.
And then when I let my body lead, when I let my body just fill. And so what I did was I was like, oh, now I'm in my body. And we got to the part in our choreography where we had a little bit of freestyle freedom. And so I just started twirling and I had this really cool 1950s inspired dress with a full skirt on it. And so the skirt was twirling really beautifully, and it made me feel like a little girl, and it felt very magical, and I instantly was in a state where my ventral vagal system was activated. I was in this state where everything was great. Life was beautiful. And so that's why it's so important for us to move our bodies and get inside of it when we're not feeling great, and to get out of our head and to get into our body. Our body leads the way, not our head.
Yeah, it's really always a great meditative practice is to not sit around and just think about stuff. Once we get up and start moving our bodies, it's a great practice for just meditation and getting energy flows going, right?
I was able to create this little 8-count piece of choreography. We all did. And then we would share it and then we would all do it together. And mine was so
Fun.
sassy and cute. I loved being able to just bring my personality to it. There was some voguing involved and like
Yeah.
my cute heart-shaped sunglasses and bright red lipstick and blowing a kiss. Just felt really good to share that with everybody and then to see how me just being me impacted everybody in that moment
Mm.
because they were all just like, oh my gosh, this is so sassy. This is so fun. I want to like throw my scarf over my shoulder and like throw my jacket over and like, let's all walk out a screen afterwards. And it was just so, so fun because I could see how other people were inspired by my authenticity. And that
Yeah.
felt really good, especially since I've been working on my self-concept, right?
Yeah.
Because I used to just think I was a piece of shit. And now I'm like, wow, they're having fun with me. That feels really good.
Mm.
Thank you for asking. I was happy to
Yeah,
share that.
fun. Very fun.
Mm.
Speaking of dancing, should we get on into
Yodelay,
this? Oh my
hoo-hoo.
God, Sadie's dance moves. Bette Midler is so
Oh
great.
my God. I love Bette Midler so much. Yes,
Yeah.
let's get into this. So, if you have not seen Big Business, I'm going to give you a quick summary of what it's about based on IMDb. In the 1940s, in the small town of Jupiter Hollow, two sets of identical twins are born in the same hospital on the same night. One set is to a poor local family and the other to a rich family just passing through. The dizzy nurse on duty accidentally mixes the twins unbeknown to the parents. Our story then flashes forward to the 1980s, where the mismatched sets of twins are about to cross paths following a big business deal to close down the Jupiter Hollow factory. Oh my God, I get excited just reading it. It's so fun. So here
Yeah.
are two sets of identical twins. So we have Sadie and Rose,
And
who are
they
now,
all have the same names, right?
yes, they all have the same names. So we have Sadie and Rose, who are in New York. And then we have Sadie and Rose, who are in Jupiter Hollow, which I think is West Virginia.
That's what I think it is West Virginia.
We have City Sadie and City Rose, and we have Country Sadie and Country Rose.
Yes. And both Sadies are Bette Midler, and both Roses are Lily Tomlin.
I hope they got paid double
For
right?
playing
Like
two
what they would have
characters
for
each.
playing two. Right. I do.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've got this quick introduction of the characters. And now I know you have some really interesting insight into their characters and their self-concept at this point. So I'm really interested to hear you get into this.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of archetype work lately and looking at leadership archetypes in particular. And what I think this movie does is a really great job at showing two different female leader archetypes, but like two sides of each coin, right? So we're seeing the side that's kind of in power and the side that is not in their power, right? So for instance, if we're looking at City Sadie is in her power.
Right. She's like CEO,
Yeah.
boss bitch. And also just a quick note, the fashion is
Yes.
just out of this world. Amazing. City Sadie has amazing taste. But anyway, go on, please.
Yeah, so City Sadie is this aggressive boss. She kind of has this air of thinking she's better than everyone else. Kind of, at the beginning of this story, they are looking to close down this factory and sell it to this Italian businessman. And, you can just kind of see that she doesn't really care about what happens to the people in this town. And, she's just ruthless, cutthroat, ruthless, is just focused on money and success, right? And so she kind of comes off as this like really aggressive boss type leader archetype, right? That doesn't really have much softness to her. And then you look at the other side of this coin and you see Country Sadie, who is this kind of bored dreamer, right? She kind of has no sense of purpose, but she has been able to feed this creative side with the dancing and the yodeling that we see at the beginning of the story. So she is way more playful, but you can see this sense of like envy and like potential for kind of jealousy and that kind of stuff. You know, when she gets into the city, you know, she's got hungry eyes, very hungry eyes, right? When she
Mm.
sees all these beautiful things, right? Then we have Country Rose, who is this other leader archetype, and we see her as this passionate activist, right? And she obviously thinks that country life is way better than the city. People in the city are just go, 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 and there's no heart to the life there, right? And you can see that she just has this like really big heart, and that's where her activist side comes out. Her whole thing is that she wants to cancel this deal that is on the table that City Sadie is kind of perpetrating, right? She's saying, okay, I want to
With the Italian
dissolve this
dude.
company. Yeah, they've got this like evil plan kind of to get rid of all these jobs and Jupiter Hollow and
And they're going to start
countries.
mining. That's the
Yes,
other
they're
big thing. They
yeah,
want to be
exactly.
mining in the town. So it's like
Right.
this environmental
Environmental
thing. Like it's a
stuff.
whole
Yeah.
bunch of gross stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say that Country Rose is really like a social justice warrior.
Completely. Yeah. She's this passionate activist. Right. And then we look at the other side of that coin and we take a look at City Rose, who is not in her power, right? She's very often referred to as a bleeding heart. She's referred to as wispy, wispy, wispy. You don't have any focus, right? That's what her sister says about her.
Do you want to hear a really fun like embodiment technique that Lily Tomlin used to get into character?
Yes, I would love to hear.
Okay. So she would spin around in circles
To get dizzy?
to get dizzy before her character of City Rose so that she seemed airheaded and ditzy.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So
But yeah,
that
she
she
is
would,
kind of like
yeah.
stumbling all over the place. Like,
Yes, and a little clumsy. And
yeah,
yes,
totally.
exactly. So
Like
she
her
would
clothes are
literally.
always falling apart. Like I think her shoulder pad
Yes.
comes
Well,
off of her shirt at
yes,
one
it
point.
looks like she's been spinning around in circles. She
I know.
does. Yeah. I mean, and that's generally her energy is she
Yeah.
has this like little chihuahua spinning around in
Yes.
circles kind of energy, and
Totally.
she's just loving and
Yeah, she's
kind
playful and
and
childish,
mhm.
and she loves animals. Like you see that
Well, I
in
don't know if
her,
I'd say
right?
childish, maybe childlike.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, childlike, but definitely very playful and very timid. And, you know, she was playing with her nephew because, you know, the sister's just shoving money in his face.
The nephew Seth Green.
Yes, yes.
My gosh, I can't believe that's Seth Green. I met
I
him
know.
once at this roller rink thing. So it was the
Oh,
robot
crazy.
chicken like roller skating party that they were having. And my sister was a roller girl at the time, and she was part of the planning of the whole situation. And so I did what I needed to do to get in. Like you had to bring like buy a video or something or whatever. But then I got in and I definitely was really
Oh my
excited to
gosh,
be
that's
hanging
so
out with
funny.
Seth Green because he played the character Oz. Anyway, let's get back to big business.
When Country Sadie meets him, she's like, "You gotta hog tie this boy. He's out of control, right?" But, you know, he clearly wants his mom's attention. And so he's, you know, making attention seeking behavior, which is acting out and, you know, being a little bit more on the aggressive side. And instead of giving him attention, she's just like shoving money at him, which I find funny. But anyway, so, you know, City Rose is really this like very innocent character who is clearly this like she's very timid, but she's, you know, she has this big heart, right? And we see this big heart when she's interacting with her nephew, and whenever she sees an animal, she's like Almost kills that one dog in the elevator.
Oh my gosh, the dog in the elevator. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And definitely a people pleaser. Like you can see that she has that
Mm.
tendency and that, you know, coping strategy, right? So
Particularly with her sister.
yes, exactly. Yeah, so what we're looking at are these 4 different characters, 2 different archetypes, but they're like 2 different versions of each archetype, right? So this like passionate activist and this boss, but what we're looking at is 2 different versions that are not balanced, right? So they're kind of like
Mm.
in the extreme, right? We're looking at 2 different extreme versions of these 2 archetypes.
Right, which makes sense. It's a comedy, so
Yeah,
they're going to
exactly.
go over the top with
Right.
the, you know,
Yeah.
the way that we see this story play out.
The acting, the spinning around
Right,
in
right.
a
Well, I
tizzy.
mean, even some of the situations, which is something that, most of these situations that happen with this mistaken identity that starts to happen throughout this film is they would never be able to happen today, right?
Yeah.
Unless everybody lost their phone and I don't know, it wouldn't be able to happen today.
Oh, yeah. No, but you know what I love about it is that we have all these movies from, you know, our childhoods that depict these bizarre scenarios, which, you know, they were reasonably possible back in the day, but they could never happen today. Like Home Alone, like Overboard, Don't Tell Mom the
Mm.
Babysitter's Dead. Like that's what this is giving me.
That's so that is so true. Let me tell you, I thought that I was going to have way more problem with like rich assholes in high school based on like John Hughes movies. So
Mm.
I grew up in a very poor area. That was not going to be a problem
Right.
that I was going to have. We had different problems. I was not prepared for the problems we were going to have. We had like
Not from the
knives
media that
and
you
things like
watched,
that in
right?
our
Oh,
school, right? Like
Jesus.
we were fighting for, you know, to be able to have our art programs in our school because they wanted to cut our art programs. Like we had different problems than they
Yeah.
had in
Yeah.
John Hughes' world. But anyway, so I would really like to get into where we start to see all these characters' self-concept shift. We don't really see much of that happen with City Sadie.
No.
She seems to be one of the more static characters in this story, and we don't really see much growth from her at all. Maybe a little bit of a softening, but
At the very end, yeah, but they don't go into that, right? And she even ends up with this rich Italian businessman, right? And kind of,
spoilers.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think that's giving away too much.
As far as Country Sadie, so I would say that Country Sadie, I would say that hers starts to shift immediately when they get to New York and they're picked up by the limo.
Yeah, she is just those hungry eyes.
Yeah, she's like, fuck
She's
yes.
like,
I don't know
this,
why this is happening,
yeah,
but I am
I
here
am
for it. Let's
into
go.
this. Yeah.
She's a little suspicious.
Right. But even at the very beginning, when she, you know, is just thinking about going to New York, she's just got this giddyish childlike excitement, you know? And once she gets there, she just wants to see everything. She's even, you know, walking around, and I think the limo driver mistakes her for City Sadie, and he is like, "You're gonna walk? I'd like to see that."
And then she starts walking all funny.
With her hands all
it's
weird.
so funny. And she's like, why does he want to watch me walk? Like, what the fuck? Okay, so then who's next? City Rose. Where do we see a self-concept shift for her?
For City Rose, that is a good question. I think that you can kind of get a sense of her self-concept shifting when she is mistaken for Country Rose by the gentleman, what's his name?
Rune?
Rune, thank you. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%
Right?
that is when she starts to shift because she's just like, oh my goodness, like what? Like,
Yeah.
wow. She's just, has that sort of like
this
vibe about
handsome
her.
man from the country, and he like kind of knows all my hopes and dreams. And it feels like he's reading her mind, right? Because she had never spoken about any of these deep desires, but what's being spoken out
Correct.
loud to her is like being reflected back to her, right? Of her desires and
Aw.
dreams. And yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So she feels
So
seen finally,
beautiful.
right? She's been trying to
Mm.
fit into this role of somebody that is this big city business person, and she has felt like completely like a fish out of water, right? And this gentleman comes along and is telling her exactly what's in her head, and she just finally feels seen for the first time, I think.
I agree. I think that's very
Mm-hmm.
well said. I have nothing to add. Okay, so what do we think about Country Rose? Do we see a real big shift? I mean, I feel like we see her soften.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that, she definitely is this more assertive version, but she comes to do this job and she does the thing, right? She is a go-getter. She's like, I'm not giving up until I have completed my mission. And then I think she can kind of like relax at the end. And that's where you see her being wooed by okay, so this is actually really interesting because I had to watch this movie twice and I didn't realize this until the end of the second viewing that Country Rose ends up with City Rose's boyfriend,
Yes.
the doctor.
Yes, exactly. Who played Pop Keaton on Family Ties back in the 80s.
Yes, that's right.
So, okay, and this, I forgot, this was your first time viewing this movie,
Oh,
correct?
recently. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this was your first time viewing this movie, and this was a movie I grew up with. So I've
Right.
watched this movie multiple times. It
Yeah.
was one of those movies that we had like a VHS
Yeah.
tape of it and would watch it on a
Over and
regular
over and
basis.
over. Yeah.
So as I was rewatching this to prepare for us to record this episode, I knew a lot of the lines and things that were getting ready to
Yeah.
happen, and it actually was very comforting and soothing. It brought me a lot of joy to rewatch this. It was a lot
Mm.
of fun. And then just to see these other really fun reflections, right? And to compare it to what the world was like then and what the world's like now, what's changed, what hasn't.
Yeah.
It was really fun to watch.
Yeah.
What about your personal reflections on this? Was there a character that you feel like you resonated with more than others?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that in my lifetime at least, I've definitely had like people pleasing tendencies. So I definitely resonated a little bit with City Rose at the beginning, not to that extent of being this like
Spinning
scared,
around to be
yeah,
dizzy?
clumsy, like kind of, you know, ditzy person. But the people pleaser aspect of that, I definitely could identify with, right? And so challenging myself to kind of and we do actually see this with Country Rose as well, because she's taking on this big activist project, right? Like she's taking on the role of leader
Mm.
for this community. So she too kind of has this people pleaser tendency, but I think it's for the greater good. It's like for her as well, right? Like she's identified that it's not just like she's not doing something because to her own detriment. It's like for her and for others, right? So I think that that's a good lesson, right? If we're going to be a bleeding heart, if we're going to be have this people pleaser tendency, where can we do that not at our own detriment, but in community to help others and to help ourselves? How about you?
I can identify parts of me that resonate with each of the four main
Yeah,
characters, which feels really fun. I'm a businesswoman and I'm also an activist and I'm also a performer
right.
and I'm also a big dreamer and I'm also somebody who's really focused on community.
Mm,
So just to see all of these things felt really good to connect with those different parts of me while I was watching this movie. I would say that the character that I relate to most, though, would be Country Sadie.
Yeah.
I feel like I even related to that character when I watched this as a child.
Yeah.
So when this movie came out, I would have been about 10 years old. And even then, at that age, I would very strongly felt a connection to Country Sadie and what she wanted out of life.
Yeah. Yeah, she didn't want this small existence, right? She wanted to move to the city to be like a part of something really big, right?
It was more this wanting to experience everything, wanting to see everything, wanting to be immersed in different cultures and not just be concerned about your own, right? Your own community, your own culture, but the world at large. So that was more, I think, for me. And that's what I guess I see more in her, because she was I feel like she very much admired a lot of the things that City Sadie did, based on the fact that she really liked the TV show Dynasty, and she was identifying with this particular character in Dynasty, right? And she embodies that character at a certain point in the movie.
Right.
So all of that to me was just really what I resonated with Country Sadie the most. Yeah. It just felt really good to see those shifts in her for me, because that's what I've wanted for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And can we just take a moment to appreciate the casting director here, because those two women were so well cast in these roles. It was, I mean, you almost feel like this movie was made with those two actresses in mind, right? To play these different characters.
Well, here's a fun fact.
Oh, yeah?
It was not.
They weren't.
It was actually Barbara Streisand and Goldie Hawn.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I did not know that. Wow. And I'm guessing Barbara Streisand to play Sadie and Goldie Hawn to play Rose?
I did not see the details on that part, just that those were the original people who were considered for the
fascinating.
roles, or yeah.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that. Wow, that is interesting, because you couldn't, I would have been convinced.
They just fucking slayed this role.
Totally.
All these roles. And that's why I say I just really hope that they got paid appropriately.
Double.
So let's talk about that a little bit, as far as like reflections in the culture at large, right? So one of the things that I see really reflected back to us in this movie is reflections of capitalism and like toxic capitalism, right?
Yes.
Because City Sadie is willing to destroy an entire town, the town that they were born in, to be able to get what she wants with this deal with the Italian guy, right?
Yeah.
We also see this really interesting juxtaposition to what was reality in the late 80s for women in business. So we see City Sadie in this role as CEO of this business. I think it's called More Max.
Yep.
And that is so bizarre for 1988. I don't know if people actually get that. 1988 is the first year that a woman was even allowed to own a business on her own without a man co-signing.
Yeah.
So the fact that she was even in this position, it's clearly just because it was like nepotism, right? She inherited company from her father. She didn't have a close relationship with her mother. We see the mother as being very detached in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, being bribed to have a kid.
Right. And the father being very excited. So I feel it's safe to assume that Sadie probably sought safety with like attachment in her parental figures by attaching with her father and learning about the business.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was probably what he cared about, right?
Right. So it's just really interesting to see those things played out, and then to see how we see things that are still the same as 1988, which is disturbing, or that we see where things have changed and progressed, or where we've seen some like back steps, or how else would we say that, where we see where we've gone backwards.
Yeah. So, I think one thing that you brought up to me before was the representation of gay characters in this movie, which was really, really unusual, I think, for the 1980s. But one fact that I learned about Bette Midler was that she kind of got some of her start working with the LGBTQ community.
What I like about the representation of gay characters in this movie as well is that we don't see this like overly stereotypical portrayal. We
Right.
don't see anything particularly flamboyant. We don't see anything that, I mean, I don't even know if I realized that the characters were gay when I watched this when I was younger.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there were some like very light hints, when the British partner, can't remember that guy's name, but he was like looking at Rune kind of a little too long, and his partner was like, okay, that's enough. He was like doing push-ups or something.
Sexy Rune doing his push-ups. I have a little bit of a story for you too, as far as like reflections in culture here. It's a little bit of a surprise story. Are you ready to hear?
I am ready.
So this movie came out in 1988, and the year that this movie was released, there were actually two sets of twin boys who were born in Colombia, and they were also switched at birth. And one set of twins grew up in an affluent family, and the other set came from a lower income family who lived in a farm community. So there was Jorge and Carlos, who grew up in the rural community, and there was Wilbur and William, who grew up in the more affluent.
I was about to say, I would imagine they don't have the same names.
That would have been next level.
Yeah.
But I think this was bizarre enough as it was.
Wow, that is really crazy.
Yeah, so they grew up assuming that they were fraternal twins.
Right.
They had no idea that they were identical twins, and they discovered this. It's a story you can actually read about if you'd like, and I really encourage you to, because it's a really, really beautiful story. You can read it in the New York Times Magazine. It's a really interesting story about how they ended up being able to come to all meet each other and be reunited, so to speak.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So
when were they reunited?
Around 2013, I believe, is when it started. That somebody was like, hey, that person looks like this person who works with me.
Oh my God, that's so bizarre.
2013 was where it started, and they were in their 20s, I would guess, at that time. I'm not doing math in my head right now.
This is something that actually happened. Oh my God. Wow. Wild.
So we can talk about like the collective things, right? Like we did when we touched on capitalism and women and seeing the representation of the LGBTQ community. This is a different type of reflection, right? So this is this same story actually playing out in the year that this, and it just makes me wonder, as we're telling these stories, what we're creating in the real world, which is first, the chicken or the egg. I know what I have my beliefs to be, and that is that our stories create our reality, and that's why we need to be aware and conscious, and making decisions based on what we want to bring into our life, based on the stories that we're absorbing, interacting with, and whatnot. Yeah. So it's just really interesting for me to see something like this actually happen in the same year that this movie
came out. That is amazing. How wild.
Yeah. I love that story too, and I hope that I'm sure it's a very, very traumatic situation for everybody involved, actually. So I just hope that everybody was able to find healing and peace in this situation, or that they're continuing to find that as they're processing this type of situation, and the grief and loss that comes with something like this as well. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, thanks for letting me share that little story with you.
Big surprise there. You surprised me twice. I also didn't know that other people were meant to be cast for those roles. So,
Yeah, I'm just full of all sorts of
all
like
these
little
facts.
bits of trivia. Yes, 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 yes. We would also like to remind you to check out our fan fiction fusion, which you can download from our website, as well as our 5-minute media journal, which will help you to identify your media habits and how the media is impacting your self concept as well as your nervous system and how you're feeling.
Mm.
That's a really good segue, I feel, to go into our
Yes.
embodiment exercise for the week because it involves some journaling. Here's my idea for your embodiment exercise for the week, and tell me what you think about this, Minx.
Yeah.
So, I would like everybody to channel their inner Sadie and Rose and their inner Rose and Sadie. So, country, city, right? If you haven't watched the film, I encourage you to watch the film and
Oh, it's so
journal
fun.
about it's so fun. So this is going to be something for you to do for a playful activity. This is not homework. This is not something that should
Yeah.
feel like a chore. This should be something playful, like playing with a paper doll or something, I guess is the way I'm
Mm.
sort of looking at it, right? So I wonder if people even know what a paper doll is anymore. Anyway, playing with your Barbie
Yeah.
doll. I don't know. Okay. So watch the film and journal about these 4 characters. So I want you to think about what would these characters wear? What food would they be eating? What restaurants would they be going to? Like, would City Rose like Chipotle?
Oh, maybe. But, I think Rose would definitely be only eating local.
Country Rose? Country Rose would definitely be eating local. They're probably, I would guess that both Roses
I
may
think that they
be
would
vegan.
yeah, totally. They would I don't think that they would be, like, into chains, though,
Right, I
you
agree. I
know?
agree. So, there, answered that question already. What kind of music would they listen to? What scents would they surround themselves by? Like, do
Mm,
they wear perfume? Are they essential oil girlies? What type
yes.
of thing? Do they have flowers all over the house?
Mm,
What are the scents that you would associate with these characters? And what type of movements would they do? Like, who's into
mhm.
yoga? Who's going to Pilates? Who's going to tango lessons? Who's going to hip hop class?
Yeah.
Could you imagine City Rose in a hip hop class? That's so fun.
Uh,
What are their hobbies? What movies and TV shows would each of these characters be watching right now? And I want to know this from your perspective, right? This is
yeah,
not a right answer or a wrong answer. This is just your perspective.
right.
What do you see when you see these characters, and what would you play with to embody these characters? And then, since, why not? Why don't you try wearing some of the things that they might wear, or eat where they might eat, or listen to the music they might listen to, right? Does Country Rose listen to Taylor Swift? Does she listen to Shania Twain? I don't know. Let's find out. Well, this was really fun, Minx. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed talking about this with you.
Yeah, I just love this movie. It's definitely going on my cozy watch list for whenever it's like a rainy day and I need something fun and happy to watch that's just comforting.
Yay. I love
Yeah.
that.
And luckily we don't need VHSs anymore, so I can just go on my laptop and press a quick button and yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
rewind it later.
Right. uh, yeah, well, I think that we had a lot of fun today just looking at exploring archetypes and leadership archetypes in preparation for this course that we're developing, and how we can look at balance between archetypes as well. How you can be multiple things in an archetype and as a leader. You don't need to just be this like assertive, aggressive boss type, right? You can also have this kind heart and you can be more playful and you can release some of that pent up aggression possibly into movement and song, right? So anyway, I think that that was a
Mm.
lot of fun to kind of look at this movie as an archetype exploration, and I really enjoyed viewing it that way. I also really enjoyed kind of this throwback, looking at you know, something that was actually pretty groundbreaking for its time, with women in leadership positions, with gay men being represented in media in not like a bad way, right?
Or
And
a
so,
stereotypical
or a
way. Mm-hmm.
stereotypical way,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this was a really great movie to look at and to share. I'm surprised that it's not more well known, I guess, I would say. And I would just, yeah, encourage people, if you haven't seen it, to watch and, yeah, try the embodiment exercise for sure.
I just realized when you were talking about the gay characters that there is pretty much absolutely no person of color represented in this movie.
Yeah, this is true. There was like one black guy that was stood up at the meeting.
I'm glad we're doing better, but we should have been doing better then too.
Yeah.
Thank you for such a great summary of everything that we talked about today, Minx. I really appreciate it. We've been talking about the movie Big Business with Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin. You can watch this on Disney Plus, streaming right now, so you can get all cozy with a blanket and cuddle up with it anytime that
Mm.
you need something to help you feel a little bit lighthearted right now. Please follow, subscribe, rate, like, review, share our podcast. Be sure that you're following us on social media. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, we do invite you to interact with our polls and questions there on Spotify. We love hearing from you. So you can also interact with us on our social media or send us an email if there's something that you'd like to share with us in particular. So, yeah, thank you everybody for joining
Thank
us.
you.
So until next time, rebel on.
Goodbye, everyone.